Hello, I'm Anchor Pete, and welcome to another episode of Anchor's Points. I apologize for there being like a little bit of a lawnmower going on. Sounds like the guy next door is beating his lawnmower bag to death right now. So any kind of sounds like that, no one's being murdered. It's just a lawnmower bag, and you might hear a mower going. Maybe a little kid will run in and scream too. For today's episode, we are talking about Harbinger Volume 4, which is called Perfect Day. This is a follow-up to my previous episode of Anchor's Points, where I went into a brief description about the Valiant universe. I'm trying to catch up with all the Valiant books, and I'd like to come up with a title for this particular type of video. You know, it could just be called like Valiant. It could just be called Valiant Quarantine Catch-Up, or, you know, something like Valiant Filling in the Gaps. If one of you guys in the comments wants to suggest a name for this type of video, that'd be fantastic. I'll probably use it if you actually write a comment and suggest it. Well, today we're going to review a Harbinger trade. And this volume was written by Joshua Dysart, who was, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Dysart. Joshua Dysart was one of the kind of architects of the new version of the Valiant universe. And he was there from the very beginning working on Harbinger. And I do think that because of his influence, Harbinger is a very unique book, and that the Valiant universe itself has its own personality. Harbinger, it feels more like a television show where people have superpowers versus a superhero book. You could easily compare it to the X-Men, and instead of the characters being mutants, they are Psiots with their mental powers, right? And I started to describe them in the last episode. There is Peter Stanchek, who is the leader of the team, and he is, very powerful. He is the one that actually went around and activated the Psiot powers in the other characters, right? And I didn't mention this other character last week. Her name is Charlene Dupree, but she has like a pyrokinesis power, right, where she can control flame. Also, there's a non-Psiot member of their team. Her name is Chris, and she kind of acts as the team's conscience and keeps Peter in line. Now, Peter Stanchek is a very interesting character. When you first meet him in the first volume of Harbinger, he is like a drug addict, and he's basically doing everything he can to escape reality. And he's hanging out with his best friend, and they're just getting high as often as they can because his powers are affecting it. And eventually he gets recruited by Toyo Harada. Now, I mentioned him last episode too. Toyo Harada is the most powerful Psiot on the planet. He has been pulling the strings for decades, as far as the whole world. His corporation is extremely powerful, and he influences everything on a global level. He's been around since the time of World War II, but he appears to be like in his, I don't know, maybe say mid-40s or so. That's just part of his power. He can do many different things with his Psiot abilities. He can fly. He can just like make people disintegrate. So probably in this video, you'll see images of like Toyo Harada holding a character and they're disintegrating. You know, that's just like one thing he kind of does. He just rip people apart with his mind. So let's catch up with Harbinger. Okay. So with Harbinger, you have Peter Stanchek and Chris and Torque, who I described last episode, Faith, who I described last episode, Charlene Dupree, who I mentioned this episode. They all have just been involved in a major event. And basically, in the previous trade, and in a couple of other Valiant books, there was something called the Harbinger Wars. Project Rising Spirit had a bunch of Psiot children that they had captured, and were going to use them for their own machinations, right? And eventually, those Psiot children were able to escape because Bloodshot, who had had a change of conscience, was able to free them, right? And at one point, the Psiot children sought refuge in Las Vegas. Peter Stanchek and his Psiots that were on his team were trying to escape from Toyo Harada. And so they went to go meet up with these Psiot children in Las Vegas. And basically there was just this all-out battle in Las Vegas that had these Psiot children that had been captured by Project Rising Spirit. They would eventually go on to be called Generation Zero. Then Bloodshot was there. And then Peter Stanchek and his Psiots, who are known as the Renegades, were there. And then Toyo Harada and his forces all showed up. And there's just this big, Psiot and, gun battle, too, going on. And in the end, this is what makes Harbinger an interesting title, is that in the end, the team lost. The Peter Stanchek's team of Renegades lost. And so they were all captured by Toyo Harada once again. And that's what brings us up to this current volume. So this is now going to be spoilers for Volume 4, Perfect Day. So if you don't want this particular trade ruined for you, just, sign out and go read it and then come back and listen to this. So for Perfect Day, the main characters are all of a sudden in LA. And they're just having the time of their lives. And they're just, at the beach and doing all these silly, goofy things that teenagers do, right? But you can tell that there's something off. It's like something wrong is going to happen soon. And by the end of the first issue of Perfect Day, Chris, who is normally the level-headed conscience of the group, she attacks Torque, right? And she really hurts him. He lets down his shell that he has, his big muscular shell, and he becomes this little shrimpy version of himself. And she just beats him, pretty much close to death. Things just get crazier from there. You see, Torque, the character Torque, his shell is all part of this persona that's part of this fantasy world that he's created in his head that he was able to inhabit before Peter Stanchek activated his Psiot abilities, right? And so he has his own little world, which is called Torkala, right? Like Valhalla. It's basically the fantasies of a redneck guy that loves reality TV, D&D, and metal, right? And Torque seems like he's going to die in his little puny dorky form, but then all of a sudden, all the characters, Peter, Faith, Chris, Charlene, they all get sucked into Torkala. And then it's like a nonstop party there, too. They can, hang out with all these weird D&D inspired characters and just have a blast, right? And there's all these little jokes in here that I love. Like there's the reality show camera that videotapes Torque is they're called the Beholder Cam, I think. I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. And, it's just a beholder, but his eyes are all camera lenses. A beholder from D&D. And he's just following him around. And I just love little jokes like that. Here's a spoiler. At one point, the characters are in an accident and they start to drown in the water in Torkala. And then they get rescued by Kardashian mermaids. And that just made me laugh out loud. I really like that. Now, it might sound like I'm rambling, and it sure does sound like a lot of weird stuff is happening in this book. Well, there's a reason behind it. You see, like I said before, Peter Stanchek and his renegades were defeated, and Toyo Harada and his forces captured them once again. And so the whole reason why everything has been so weird, it went from this perfect day to Chris hurting Torque severely, and then everyone being in Torkala, is because secretly Toyo Harada's Psiots that he has created an illusion, this virtual world, and imprisoned each of the renegades in that world together. They're all in this shared fake reality. Man, do I look rough in this coronavirus situation. Not getting a haircut, not trimming my beard. But you know what? I wanted to film the end of this video for you. First off, I want to say to you, thank you so much for watching this entire video. I know there's a lot of stuff in there where if you don't read comic books or if you don't read Harbinger, you're probably like, what the hell is this guy talking about? But I appreciate you making it all the way to this point. So let me just sum up how I felt about this book. I was under the impression that it was going to be kind of generic. I thought that when the Harbingers were having such a good time, that something cliche was going to happen, like maybe one of them was going to get taken out by a bad guy that was coming after them, and then that was going to be the end. But as you could tell from my review, just strange occurrence, strange twist after strange twist happened, and I just couldn't predict what was going to happen next. And
and I really appreciated that. I love it when a comic book does something I'm not expecting it to do, because I've read so many comics, I just usually can predict what's going to happen. That's it. So that's the episode. All right. Thanks for your time. Please stay safe.